The pod that fell from the stars. The market buzzed like a hive on the edge of collapse. Somewhere near the edge of the Andros Belt, on a forgotten trade station called Port Hexus, crowds of every kind of being moved shoulder to shoulder, shouting over each other, haggling for food, parts, weapons, and everything in between. The air smelled like rust and spice, the kind of scent that stuck to your clothes and never let go. Under flickering lights and patched-together banners, merchants barked deals while smugglers eyed each other through mirrored lenses. This was not a place where you expected kindness, and definitely not a place where you expected miracles. Jace Tauren had come to the market looking for engine filters. His ship, the Ember Drift, wasn't exactly in top shape, and if he didn't replace the filters soon, he'd be stuck breathing in recycled fume dust for weeks. He was tired, broke, and in no mood for surprises. But fate doesn't ask for permission. A crate dropped nearby with a sharp metallic crash, loud enough to silence a dozen conversations. Jace turned his head lazily, expecting to see some unlucky vendor scrambling to pick up his scattered goods. But what he saw instead made his breath catch. It was a pod. Small, smooth, and shaped like a tear. Its outer shell was made from a pearlescent material Jace didn't recognize, part crystal, part metal, almost like it was grown rather than built. A nearby merchant, sweating and cursing in a mix of languages, stepped back in panic. "That wasn't mine," he insisted. "Someone else loaded that, not me." The pod hissed. A crack slid along its surface with an eerie sound, like ice breaking underfoot. And then, slowly, the top folded open. Inside was a girl. Small, strange, silent. Her skin shimmered faintly, a pale blue hue wrapped in a thin cloth that looked like silk and smoke. She looked barely alive. Eyes shut, lips parted, hair floating as if underwater. The moment she appeared, the crowd surged backward. Whispers turned into shouts. "What kind of alien is that? She's not registered. Not in any Alliance database. Sell her. Lock her up." Jace didn't know what possessed him, but he stepped forward while everyone else stepped back. Maybe it was her stillness, or the way the light caught on her skin like moonlight on water. Maybe it was something else, but as the crowd shouted, he moved, crouched beside the pod, and put a hand on its edge. The girl didn't move. She looked fragile, like one breath might break her. "She needs help," he said aloud. Someone laughed. "Help? You're kidding, right? She's black market cargo. She doesn't exist." "You touch her," growled another voice. "You make yourself a target. There's laws. She's not human." Those words snapped something in Jace. He looked up, not at the crowd, but at the girl. And then, without a word, he lifted her from the pod. She was light, too light, barely breathing. Her skin felt cool against his arms, but not lifeless. She was warm at the core, like something had kept her alive just long enough to reach here. A sharp alarm rang out from above, the kind used by station security. Someone had alerted them. "You've got about 20 seconds before they tag you and fry you," someone sneered. Jace ran. His legs moved on instinct, pushing through alleys he barely remembered, dodging steam vents and flickering signs. Behind him, voices shouted and boots slammed on metal. He ducked into an old maintenance shaft, one the scavengers used for smuggling parts. It hadn't been lit in years. Perfect. He laid the girl down gently and caught his breath. He could hear his heart pounding, feel the sweat on his back. What was he doing? He didn't even know her name, didn't know what species she was, didn't know anything. Then her fingers twitched. Jace froze. The girl's eyes opened slowly. Her pupils were deep violet, rimmed with gold, and they locked onto his with a kind of tired recognition. Her lips parted. Her voice, when it came, was like wind on a distant field, soft, broken, and impossibly familiar. Jace. His breath caught. His name. How did she know his name? She reached for his hand, weakly, like it was the only thing in the universe she trusted. He stared down at her, the cold walls around them, the shadows creeping closer from the tunnels beyond. And he realized this was no accident. This girl didn't fall here by mistake. Someone sent her. Someone powerful. And now, Jace Tauren had just become the most wanted man in the quadrant. For rescuing the one being the entire galaxy wasn't supposed to find. Secrets written in her eyes. The tunnels beneath Port Hexus were carved long ago, back when the station still had dreams of growth and glory. Now, they were graveyards of cables and forgotten vents, echoing with the quiet hum of old machines. Jace sat beside the alien girl, his back pressed against the cold wall, his mind spiraling. He should have left her, should have walked away. Instead, he held her like she was something precious, something breakable, though he didn't even know her name. The distant hum of search drones passed overhead, their red lights scanning the corridors above. For now, they were safe. But not for long. The girl stirred again, her head turned slightly, resting against his shoulder. Her voice came soft, barely more than a whisper. "Jace, you came." He blinked, not sure if he'd heard her right. "You know me?" he asked, voice low. She nodded, eyes still half closed. "From before the fall." "What fall?" he asked, though something deep inside told him the answer wouldn't be simple. She tried to sit up, wincing. Her strength was barely there, but she refused to stay still. Jace helped her gently. Her skin felt warm now, alive. Her fingers gripped his sleeve like she was afraid of losing him. "My name is Leary," she said slowly. "I was made to find you." Jace pulled back slightly. "Made? What do you mean?" Leary looked at him, her eyes shining like twin galaxies trapped behind glass. "I'm not just a girl. I'm not a person the way you understand. I was created, grown in starlight, engineered by those who remembered the old human worlds. They'd put memories in me, pieces, fragments, things I would need if I ever found you. But why me?" She touched his chest gently, over his heart. "Because you're different. Because when the stars called for help, your name was in the signal." Jace swallowed hard. His heart pounded louder now, not from fear, but from the sudden weight of meaning. "This is insane." "You don't have to believe," she said. "Just help me reach the place." "What place?" She didn't answer, not with words. Instead, she reached toward a nearby console, one of the old station panels, long rusted and dead. Her hand hovered just above it. And then, without touching, the screen flickered on. Jace's eyes widened. The interface glowed with strange symbols and human letters, dancing together as if speaking in a forgotten code. How did you do that?" "I was made with memory strands," she whispered. "They let me speak to machines, old ones built by the first travelers." He didn't understand most of what she said, but something in her voice made him believe it anyway. Before he could ask more, a harsh crackle came from the ceiling. Security scanners were sweeping the lower levels. Jace stood quickly. They couldn't stay here. They needed to move. "Can you walk?" he asked. Leary nodded weakly. Jace pulled her close, wrapping her in an old cloak. Together, they slipped deeper into the underlayers, hiding in the spaces between forgotten metal and broken light. As they walked, Jace asked, "Why were you in that pod?" Leary looked down. "I was being hunted. Someone destroyed my world. I was meant to survive, to reach a human who would protect me. The others, they didn't make it. Others?" She stopped walking. "There were more like me, made by the same creators, each one with a purpose. But the signal failed. The warlords came. They took the pods, sold them, broke them. So why were you left behind?" She looked up at him with those deep eyes again. "Because someone wanted you to find me." Jace felt a chill crawl down his back. This was bigger than him, bigger than anything he'd ever wanted to get involved in. He was just a mechanic, a nobody drifting on half-junk ships. But this girl, this Leary, had fallen into his arms like she was dropped by destiny itself. And she wasn't just talking nonsense. She could control machines. She knew his name. And worst of all, people were willing to kill to get her back. They reached an old cargo bay, sealed with a rusted door. Jace pried it open just enough to slip inside. He used to store scavenged parts here, but now it would serve as a hideout. He helped Leary lie down on an old crate padded with blankets. Her breathing was easier now, her strength returning little by little. "Rest," he said softly. "I'll watch the entrance." She looked at him, her voice calm but full of something ancient. "They'll come for me soon. You should leave." Jace shook his head. "Not happening." "Why?" she asked. He didn't answer right away. He sat beside her instead. Maybe it was the quiet, or the way the shadows bent around them, but something about this moment felt like the turning of a wheel that had been still for far too long. "Because you were alone," he said finally. "And I know what that feels like." Outside, searchlights scanned the outer hull of the cargo zone. Alarms buzzed in distant sectors. The station was tightening its grip, and somewhere far across the galaxy, a cold pair of eyes watched a glowing screen. They saw Jace lift the alien girl from the pod. They saw him run. And they whispered one word with a cruel smile. "Found." The wreckage of a forgotten world. The stars stretched endlessly before them, silent witnesses to secrets long buried. Jace leaned against the ship's worn console, eyes flicking between blinking lights and a growing storm in his mind. It had been 3 days since they fled Port Hexus. 3 days of watching over Leary as she drifted in and out of sleep, her strange energy stabilizing bit by bit. Each time she opened her eyes, she spoke of things Jace couldn't quite believe. Voices from the stars, memory strands, ancient vaults hidden beneath ruined planets. Things that sounded more like a bedtime story than a mission. But the way she said his name, like she'd known it all her life, that part felt too real to ignore. Their stolen ship was barely spaceworthy, a transport freighter with mismatched hull plates and an overworked engine. Jace had patched it up as best he could, but even with Leary's help, whispering to the ship's core like it could understand her, it wasn't fast. And speed mattered now, because the message they intercepted wasn't meant for them. It came from a bounty hub deep in the belt. A single line. "Girl recovered. Human accomplice. Asset retrieval authorized. Lethal allowed." They weren't just being hunted. They were being marked for elimination. Jace didn't tell Leary the full message. He didn't want to scare her more than she already was. But she already knew. Somehow, she always knew. "They'll come fast," she said, her voice like wind slipping through leaves. "But we have to reach the planet first." "The dead one?" Jace asked, brow furrowed. "You're sure something's down there?" "Not something," she whispered, sitting beside him, wrapped in a faded thermal blanket. "Someone. The one who made me." The words hung in the air like frost. When they arrived, the planet looked like a scar drifting in the void. No green, no oceans, just black stone and ash-colored dust. A world that had been burned from the inside out. Jace had seen plenty of ruins in his scavenger days, but this was different. This place didn't look like it had lost a war. It looked like it had been silenced. Deliberately, violently, and long ago. They landed in a canyon carved by something other than time. Ancient machines lay half-buried in the rocks, shaped like bones and towers and wings. Jace felt a chill as they stepped outside. The air was thin, barely breathable. The sky hung low and gray like the world had forgotten how to shine. "This was your home?" he asked gently. Leary nodded, eyes full of grief and wonder. "A long time ago. Before the pods. Before we were scattered." They walked together through the ruins, past fallen statues and twisted towers covered in strange vines made of metal and crystal. The deeper they went, the more Jace saw traces of something familiar, symbols that looked almost human. patterns that reminded him of old colony language from the first diaspora. "This can't be coincidence," he muttered. "Humans were here." Leary stopped in front of a massive door embedded in a cliff face. Her fingers brushed over the surface, and the door responded, sliding open with a deep, echoing sigh. Inside was a chamber, untouched by time. Machines still hummed. Lights flickered to life, and at the center stood a pillar wrapped in glowing filaments, like veins of starlight pulsing softly. "This is where I began," she said, "and it's where I was meant to return." Jace stepped toward the pillar, heart pounding. He didn't understand any of this, but some part of him, some instinct, whispered that this moment mattered. He reached out, and the pillar responded. The light surged, the chamber came alive. A hologram flickered into existence above them. It showed a face, not quite human, not quite alien. A woman with eyes like molten glass, and a voice like thunder wrapped in silk. "If you are hearing this," the voice said, "then one of our children has survived." Jace stepped back, stunned. "Our world was lost to war. We could not stop," the voice continued. "But we did not die in vain. We encoded what we could. In Leary. And in you." The image shifted. It showed genetic maps, fragments of ancient DNA spliced with code. Jace stared, unable to process what he was seeing. "You carry the echo of the old colonies," the voice said. "Your ancestors were more than wanderers. They were creators. And now one of their kind has returned." Jace looked at Leary. She looked at him. "This is why you knew me," he whispered. Leary nodded slowly. "You were always part of this." Before he could ask more, a blaring alarm shook the chamber. Jace ran to the console, checking the sensors. Inbound ships, 3 of them, descending fast. "They found us. We have to protect the pillar," Leary said. "If they take it, the others will never awaken." "Others?" "There were 7 of us," she said. "I don't know how many are left, but this place holds their paths, their keys." Jace gritted his teeth. He didn't know what he was fighting for yet, but he knew he wasn't walking away. They set up what little defense they could, sealing the outer doors and rerouting power to the shielding. Jace handed Leary a scavenged pulse baton. She had never held a weapon before, but she took it like she'd always known how. As the sound of engines roared above and dust began to fall from the ceiling, Jace turned to her. "Whatever happens," he said, "I'm staying with you." Leary touched his hand. "I know," she said. "That's why you were chosen." And then the doors exploded inward. The girl who could destroy empires. The blast wave from the exploding doors shook the ancient chamber like a wounded beast groaning beneath stone. Jace pulled Leary behind the pillar, shielding her with his body as dust and metal rained down around them. Shadows flooded into the room, black armored figures moving in perfect silence, weapons raised, visors glowing red. Bounty enforcers, not hired thugs this time. No, these were professionals, the kind sent when someone really wanted you gone. Their rifles didn't ask questions. They spoke in bursts of light and death. Jace fired first, an old pulse pistol he'd stolen from a scavenger crew years ago. It stuttered and spat blue light, knocking one of the soldiers off balance. But there were too many. He ducked and fired again, dragging Leary toward the far wall, trying to lead her toward the tunnels behind the chamber. But she stopped. "We can't run anymore," she said quietly. Her voice didn't shake. Her eyes didn't blink. And in that moment, Jace saw something change in her. She stepped out from behind the pillar and held out her hand. The enforcers opened fire, but the bolts stopped midair. Jace gasped as he saw them. 6 glowing projectiles, frozen in space like drops of water held in a moment of time. The soldiers hesitated, confused. That second of uncertainty cost them. Leary moved her hand in a slow, circular motion. The bolts reversed, then surged back toward their senders. 3 fell instantly, armor scorched. The others tried to scatter, but the ground beneath them lit up with symbols. glyphs that pulsed with energy Jace couldn't understand. The chamber responded to her. Not just the machines, but the stone itself. The walls shimmered with light. The ceiling bent like it was made of liquid glass. And the soldiers, trained killers from every corner of the galaxy, began to scream. They weren't dying. They were remembering. Jace watched in horror as the soldiers dropped their weapons, clutching their heads, eyes wide with visions. Lyri stood in the center, her expression calm, as if she were opening a book no one else could see. "What are you doing to them?" Jace shouted. "Showing them the truth," she whispered. "What they were, what they became." One of the soldiers collapsed to his knees, eyes full of tears. He looked up at Lyri, not with hate, but with something close to awe. "What are you?" Lyri looked down at him. "Not a weapon," she said. "Not anymore." Jace rushed to her side. "You could have killed them." "I still might have to," she said, "but I needed to see if they could still feel anything, even pain." The surviving soldiers crawled away, broken in ways Jace didn't understand. They left their weapons behind. They didn't even try to call for backup. But it didn't matter, because someone worse was already coming. The hologram above the pillar flickered again. This time, the voice was different, colder, sharper, filled with static. A transmission hijacking the old system. "We see you now," it said. "The girl has awakened. The key is active." Jace looked up, his stomach twisting. "Who is that?" Lyri's voice grew hard. "Someone who made a mistake. Someone who thought we would stay silent forever." The image shifted to show a face. A man with white skin like carved marble, eyes like obsidian mirrors. He wore the insignia of the Crimson Order, an ancient faction fought long dead. They were the ones who hunted the pod children. The ones who broke worlds to keep secrets buried. "You should have stayed hidden," the man said. "Now, the hunt becomes a purge." The message cut out. Jace turned to Lyri. "They're coming. More ships. We can't stay here." Lyri nodded. She walked to the pillar and placed both hands on its surface. The glowing veins dimmed, then pulsed once, like a heartbeat. "The coordinates are stored now," she said. "We can find the others." "There are more of you." "Two that I know for sure," she said, "but they won't remember who they are until someone wakes them. And if the Crimson Order finds them first." She didn't need to finish the sentence. Jace helped her back to the ship. The canyon outside was already beginning to shake. Long-range seismic bombs were being dropped. The sky burned with re-entry trails. As they took off, Jace saw the planet below begin to crack further, like even its bones were tired of hiding the truth. Inside the ship, Lyri sat silently. Her eyes were closed, but her lips moved, whispering a language Jace couldn't understand. He sat beside her. "You said you weren't a weapon," he murmured. "But what are you becoming?" Lyri opened her eyes. Something new. Something they were never ready for. "And me?" he asked. She looked at him for a long time. "You're my anchor. Without you, I'd be lost in the memories." Jace didn't know what that meant. Not really. But he knew this. He'd seen power before. Greedy, hungry, ugly power. But what Lyri had, it wasn't power meant for destruction. It was meant for healing. It just didn't know how to be gentle yet. They didn't speak again for hours. The ship coasted toward their next destination. Another old coordinate buried in the vault's memory. A place where a second pod might rest. But across the galaxy, the Crimson Order was no longer sending bounty hunters. They were sending soldiers, and their leader had just given the order. "Bring me the girl, or burn every system she touches." The vault of light. The stars passed slowly outside the ship's scratched windows, each one a whisper of a story already told. Jace sat alone in the cockpit, staring into that silence, his hands wrapped around a cup of synth brew gone cold long ago. Lyri was resting in the small chamber behind him, curled beneath a thermal blanket, her breathing soft and steady for once. She hadn't said much since they left the ruins of her world. Maybe it was the weight of memory, or maybe it was something deeper, a fear even she didn't know how to name. Jace didn't blame her. He didn't have the words either. He'd seen her stop a platoon with a wave of her hand, bend machines with a whisper, and touch things no human could understand. But it wasn't just her powers that haunted him. It was the way she looked after. Like every time she used them, she gave up a piece of herself. Like something sacred inside her chipped away, little by little. And still, she refused to stop. They were following a signal now. Not a distress call, but something older. Something encoded into Lyri's memories by the ones who made her. She called it the Second Vault. It was buried on a moon called Kelendra, a place no one had visited in over 100 years. The record said it was uninhabitable, unstable, too much tectonic activity, too dangerous to colonize. But the vault didn't care about that. It had waited. When they arrived, the moon greeted them with silence. Jagged cliffs loomed beneath thick fog. The surface shifted constantly, cracking and groaning as if the land itself were alive and restless. Jace piloted the ship low, searching for the coordinates buried in Lyri's head. She stood beside him, eyes glowing faintly, hands gripping the edge of the console like she was bracing against a memory trying to break through. "There," she said softly, pointing toward a narrow valley split by a glowing river of liquid crystal. "It's below that." Jace landed the ship carefully on a flat shelf of rock. They stepped out into the strange wind, which carried a sound like distant voices whispering through the dust. Jace didn't ask what they were saying. He had a feeling Lyri already knew. Together, they climbed down into the valley, their boots crunching on fractured stone. At the center, hidden beneath a crust of gray ash, lay a single disc-shaped platform, pulsing faintly with golden light. Lyri stepped forward and knelt, placing both hands on its surface. The ground responded immediately. Light erupted upward in a perfect column, casting shadows in every direction. The air vibrated, and then the ground split open. A staircase appeared, leading into the darkness. Jace followed her down. The vault of light wasn't a place, it was a feeling. As they descended, the walls lit up with slow rhythmic pulses, soft like a heartbeat, bright like sunrise. Symbols danced across the stone, telling stories neither of them fully understood. Faces appeared in the light, flickers of memory, ancestors long gone, speaking in a language Jace could feel more than hear. It wasn't just a vault, it was a cathedral, a sanctuary. At the bottom was a single chamber. In the center stood a sphere of crystal, floating just above a pedestal. When Lyri approached, the sphere opened, revealing something Jace didn't expect. It was another girl, smaller than Lyri, asleep inside the sphere, her hair like threads of fire, her skin pale and faintly golden. Unlike Lyri, she didn't look peaceful. Her face was twisted in pain, her hands clenched. "She's one of the others," Lyri said softly. "Her name is Rena." "Why is she still inside?" Jace asked. "Because she wasn't ready," Lyri answered. "She was afraid." Jace stepped closer. "Can we wake her?" Lyri looked uncertain. "Only if we give her something she lost." "Like what?" "Trust, warmth, a memory that matters." Jace reached out. He placed his hand gently against the sphere, and something inside it pulsed. The crystal shimmered. And then, slowly, Rena's eyes opened. But they weren't kind. She screamed, sharp and piercing. And the vault trembled. Energy shot from her fingers, slamming Jace back against the wall. Lyri moved fast, placing herself between them, raising her hand in a soft wave. "Rena," she whispered, "it's me." The girl's breathing slowed. Her gaze darted from Lyri to Jace, full of confusion and fear. "Who is he?" she asked. "Someone who saved me," Lyri said. "Someone who didn't run." Rena curled up inside the sphere. "I saw fire. I saw the stars die." Lyri knelt beside her. Those were old memories. Not your fault. Not your choice. They made us, Rena whispered. But they never stayed. They just left us behind. I know, Leary said, her voice breaking. But I'm not leaving you. And neither will he. The sphere dimmed, then faded away completely. Rena fell into Leary's arms, trembling like a child lost in the cold. Jace stepped forward slowly, his voice calm. We can take you somewhere safe. Rena looked at him, not with trust. Not yet. But she nodded. Together, they climbed back to the surface. But as they reached the top of the valley, Jace's comm buzzed with a silent alert. Incoming ships. Lots of them. They found us again, he said. Leary closed her eyes. Then we have to make a choice. What kind of choice? We activate the vault fully, she said. We open its memory to the galaxy. But once we do, there's no going back. They'll know everything. And they'll come in greater numbers. Rena, still weak, looked up. Can we even survive that? Jace looked at both of them. He didn't know if they could survive it. But he knew they had to try. We don't run anymore, he said. We show them what you really are. Leary nodded. Then stand with me, she whispered, and light the sky. And with that, she placed her hand on the pedestal. The vault pulsed. And far above, orbiting satellites and watching eyes saw it, an explosion of light bursting from the moon's surface, a signal so powerful it echoed across star systems. It was a message. And a warning. They weren't hiding anymore. The Guardian and the fire. The station looked like a wound stitched across the sky, half buried in the corona of a dying star, orbiting so close to the heat that its hull shimmered red, like it was in constant pain. It was ancient, older than any map Jace had ever seen, built before the Alliance, before the wars, maybe even before humans forgot how many worlds they truly touched. No one lived there now. No one sane, anyway. But Leary insisted it was where the final answers waited. And so they came. As their ship approached, the temperature gauges began to spike. Alarms blared, warning them to turn back, but Jace flew on. Leary sat beside him, eyes closed, lips moving silently, whispering to the station like it might listen. Beside her, Rena clutched the edge of the seat, still unsure, still afraid, but no longer broken. She hadn't spoken much since the vault. She didn't need to. Her presence meant something all on its own. The moment they entered the station's outer ring, everything changed. The ship shut down. Not slowly, not a flicker or a warning, but all at once. Lights died. Controls locked. Gravity failed. They floated in silence, helpless, like insects caught in a frozen web. And then the voice came. Not over the comms, not in the air, in their minds. You are not authorized. You are incomplete. Identify. Jace gasped, grabbing the sides of his head. Leary winced, but did not cry out. She opened her eyes and looked directly into the empty space before them. I am Leary, she said softly, child of the architects, bearer of the sequence. The silence held. One part confirmed. Others remain in doubt. A beam of light wrapped around their ship and pulled it inward, toward the core of the station. Jace had no choice but to grab what gear he could, help Rena to her feet, and follow Leary as the ramp hissed open. They stepped into a place that defied understanding. The walls pulsed with heat and memory. Holographic patterns danced like flames across the floor. Machinery spun in silence, older than time but still humming with purpose. And above them, suspended in the air, was a figure. Not a person. Not really. It was the Guardian. Its body was made of shifting plates and flowing light, like armor forged from fire and shadow. Its face was a mask, blank except for a single eye that burned like a dying sun. The key walks, it said. But what of the anchor? Jace stepped forward. On with her. The Guardian turned its gaze to him. You are human, flawed, born of chaos. You burn, you betray, you destroy. Jace didn't flinch. Yeah, probably. But I also stayed when I could have left. I carried her when no one else would. I listened when she needed it, and I never once treated her like a thing. The Guardian's eye dimmed. And if she loses control, then I'll hold her hand, he said quietly, until she finds herself again. There was silence. Then a deep rumble, low, slow, like the groaning of an ancient beast waking after centuries of sleep. Then let the trial begin. Without warning, the floor vanished. They fell, not through air, but through memory. Jace landed hard in a world not his own. The sky was gold. The ground was glass, and the stars pulsed above like hearts. Beside him, Leary appeared, dazed. So did Rena, eyes wide. They weren't alone. The Guardian took shape again, towering over them, its voice no longer cold, but thunderous. To unlock the final sequence, you must pass the fire. It is not a weapon. It is not a threat. It is you. Flames erupted around them. Not hot, not burning, but heavy, full of every fear, every regret, every choice not taken. Jace staggered as memories flooded him. His mother's death, the friends he lost during a freighter raid, the time he could have saved someone and didn't. His knees buckled. Leary screamed as visions of broken pods and burning children raced through her mind. The other versions of herself that never made it. The voices of creators who abandoned her. And worse, the echo of what she might become if she gave in to anger. Rena curled into herself, whispering that she didn't want to be used again. Not ever. And yet, even through the fire, they reached for each other. Jace's hand found Leary's. Leary reached for Rena. And in that moment, the fire changed. It didn't vanish. It became light. Soft, warm, forgiving. The Guardian stepped back, its single eye now calm. You passed. A platform rose from the ground, revealing a sphere pulsing with layered energy. A final piece of the sequence. Leary touched it, and knowledge rushed into her. Coordinates, signals, names. She turned to Jace, tears in her eyes. They're alive. More of us. Scattered. Hidden. Waiting. Jace smiled weakly. Then we're not done yet. You are not, said the Guardian. But now you are complete. The fire no longer judges. It protects. You may carry it. Rena stood slowly, her face pale but calm. We're not just survivors, she said. We're a spark. And Jace looked at the two of them, girls forged in stars, broken by cruelty, but still standing. He took Leary's hand again. Let's light the way. Above them, the station opened like a flower, releasing a final burst of light that carried their message across the galaxy. A message the Crimson Order couldn't ignore. But by then, it was already too late. The fire had chosen. The galaxy had watched in silence. The sky above Kaldros Prime was thick with warships. Alliance vessels, private fleets, Crimson Order dreadnoughts, all locked in a standstill, engines pulsing, weapons charged, crews silent. It was the kind of gathering that only happened before something historic, or something catastrophic. In the center of it all, surrounded by every eye, and sensor the galaxy could aim, hovered one small ship, barely armored, slow and unimpressive by any measure of force. But no one fired. Not yet, because everyone was waiting to see what she would do. Inside the ship, Jace stood near the observation window, his hand resting on the console like he needed to steady himself. The tension out there was thick enough to choke a planet. Behind him, Leary stood tall, no longer the quiet girl he'd found inside a broken pod. Her presence filled the room. Not just her power, but her calm, her clarity, her choice. Rena stood beside her, quiet but steady, her fire now something warm instead of wild. They were no longer lost children of forgotten creators. They were something new, something claimed. A message had been sent across the stars. The vaults had opened. The coordinates of the surviving pod children had been released to all major systems. Leary's signal hadn't asked for war. It hadn't even asked for protection. It simply said, "We are alive. We remember. We choose peace, but we will not hide anymore." And now, the galaxy waited to see if she would burn or shine. The ship's comms buzzed. A voice came through, calm, cruel, and familiar. "You're surrounded, Leary," said the commander of the Crimson Order, his tone like ice wrapped in velvet. "Stand down. Surrender the vault sequences, and we will spare the human." Jace rolled his eyes. "Nice of him to include me." "He doesn't understand," Leary said softly. "He still thinks this is about control." Another voice chimed in, an Alliance admiral this time. "You've activated ancient systems without authorization. We don't know what you are. We don't know if we can trust you." Reyna stepped forward. "Then ask us. Don't cage us." "Show them," Jace said. Leary nodded. She stepped to the central console, placed her hand on the surface, and whispered a word older than language. Outside, the ship's hull shimmered. A ring of light spread outward like a ripple on water. It passed through warships, frigates, probes. It touched them, but it didn't harm. Instead, it showed them. The light wasn't just energy. It was memory. Every captain, every soldier, every being watching felt it. Flashes of Leary's journey, her loneliness in the pod, the broken vaults, Jace's choice to protect her, Reyna's pain and awakening, the trial of fire, the hope they carried, and the choice to forgive instead of destroy. When the light faded, silence returned. But it wasn't the same silence as before. It was something deeper, something listening. On the lead Crimson ship, the commander's voice returned, shaken but still defiant. "This changes nothing. Your kind will bring imbalance. Fear, the order." "You are the imbalance," Leary interrupted. Her voice echoed across all channels, clear and soft and unshakable. "You hunted us because we were made to create, not obey. You wanted silence. We chose song. You wanted control. We chose each other." The Admiral spoke again. "And what do you want now?" Jace stepped beside her. "To live." Reyna followed. "To heal." Leary met the eyes of every ship, every captain, every washer. "To be free." And then something unexpected happened. A ship powered down its weapons. Then another, and another, until half the armada dimmed their engines and drifted, quiet and waiting. The Crimson commander shouted orders, but his fleet didn't move. No one wanted to fire. Not after what they felt. Not after what they saw. Because what Jace and Leary had built, through fear and fire, was more than survival. It was trust. It was proof that even the most broken parts of the galaxy could still choose something better. The Crimson ships turned away, one by one, until only silence remained. And finally, the voice of the Alliance admiral returned. "You've made your point, and perhaps a beginning." Leary smiled faintly. "It's not just mine to make." She turned to Jace, her hand reaching for his, fingers wrapping around his like she'd been doing it her whole life. "We do this together," she said. "Yeah," he whispered. "We always did." Later, as the stars returned to their usual rhythm, and the threat of war faded into distant memory, the message would spread. Not just in words, but in feelings passed through the networks of old machines Leary had awakened. Every world would remember the day a human and an alien girl stood in front of fleets and fire, and chose to speak instead of strike. They would say it began with a pod, with a girl who fell from the stars, with a human who caught her, not because he had to, but because he couldn't walk away. They would say it ended with the galaxy watching in silence, and choosing hope.